Hello, I'm Aurora, and this is a tutorial about making small resolution textures. For this tutorial I'm going to be using Paint Pro, a fairly ancient piece of software, Paint Pro 8. However, you will be able to find most of the tools and brushes and other filters that I'm using in this tutorial in Photoshop, GIMP, or other graphic editors that you'll probably be using. So this time I'm going to be making textures for a log cabin, and the first thing I do before making any kind of textures is I need source material, reference images. So I have these pictures. I'm gonna copy them into my editor. Size them down a little bit like this. I dug this up from Google image search, searching for things like log cabin window, log cabin door, log cabin corner, log cabin wall. So the texture size I'm going for is 64 by 64, so fairly small pixel art. So I'm gonna make an image with space for a few tiles. I'm gonna use the grid to make 64 by 64 squares. So now I can tell clearly where each texture is supposed to go, even when I'm not using the grid. For this instance, I'm going to set the grid to maybe, I'm going to halve it, then I'm going to halve it, I'm going to halve it to 8 pixels, because I'm probably going to have a stack of 8 logs on this one wall. So let's turn off the grid for a little bit. Let's look at these walls. So you've got these log cabins, and mostly you're gonna see log cabins outdoors. And where's the light coming from outdoors? Well, it's kind of coming from high up, usually at an angle. So what that means is this part, the top of the log is going to be brighter and the bottom is going to be darker, but also these gaps between the logs where it's deeper, where light doesn't reach, those are going to be darker. So first of all, select the area for the first log. Actually, I'm going to create this in a new layer. So I'm going to create a new layer first. I'm going to pick some color that looks like wood. That's good enough. I'm going to use the paint bucket to fill this area, and then I'm going to use the lighten / darken brush and disable the grid again. Set it to maybe the same size as the height of the log itself, and then slightly off center, slightly like on the top, not at the top, not at the center, but kind of between. You just brighten up like this. Make the brush size a little smaller and repeat the process. It doesn't have to be straight, because the logs are in perfectly cylindrical either, so there can be a little imperfections like here. And then also the bottom is going to be darker, so like this. Now I'm just going to copy this over. Copy, copy. In Paint Pro, it's Ctrl-C, Ctrl-E. In Photoshop, I don't know. It's best you figure out the hotkeys so that stuff like this doesn't take ages. Also, you notice there's a bit of you can notice that the pattern kind of repeats, so you can like flip around some of these. The tiling is a little less obvious, you can't really see it that clearly anymore. Okay, so now you can see that the gaps are quite dark, so I want to kind of darken those gaps, but I'm not sure how dark I want to make them. So every time you're adding some effect that you're kind of afraid that you might screw it up, or you're not sure about the strength of the effect, just create it on a new layer. I'm going to create a new layer, add the grid, make sure snap the grid is on. Choose a little tiny brush, like 2 pixels. I use pitch black color and just draw these lines over. And just to ensure that I don't have any black lines where they're not supposed to be, I'm going to select this area, invert the selection, press delete, invert the selection again, and enable the bottom layers again. Okay. So that's way too dark. Make it a little bit lighter. Maybe blur it a little bit. There we go. You notice when I blurred it, it also blurred out, you know, because this side is transparent, it also blurred out this side, so it's kind of brighter. You can see that the dark bit here, there's discontinuity, very slight discontinuity. I'll take the grid off so you can see it. So I'm just gonna fix that by taking off these edges, copying it back to them. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then just gonna merge all the layers. Actually I won't, because I might want to use this dark layer, these dark gaps, before I merge them down. So now I want to like make a wooden texture. So how am I gonna do that? Well, you might have a filter, you know, a noise filter, like clouds or white noise or something like that. But in case you don't, let's do this. It's just kind of like scribble some shit around like this. Let's copy that and let's make it twice the width. Flip it around so it continues, and then let's scribble around a little bit more, but let's not touch the edges. We want to keep the continuity. Okay. Let's use some black too. And now let's just resize this to be a fraction of its height. Maybe even more. There we go. That looks better. So now we have that image open. I'm going to use my paint bucket tool here and select, actually I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to select my tile area and take the paint bucket tool And I'm gonna use the pattern of this image I just created, and to avoid tiling I might just scale it down a little bit, give it a very slight angle. That's too big. Scale it down. That's better. I'm not sure. A little bit bigger. There we go. I think I'm quite happy with that. And then I'm just gonna try different overlay modes, layer modes. Hard light looks kinda good, so long as you don't go 100% on it. And maybe leave it at 50%. And actually this layer that has the dark gaps on it, I'm gonna move it on the top. Okay. I think that looks like a log cabin wall. I'm gonna merge all the layers, and now we've got one problem. This probably doesn't tile very well, so let's see. Let's copy this tile and paste it a couple of times. Okay, so that's right, it doesn't tile very well. So what I'm gonna do is, I've copied these 3 times, and I'm gonna be working on the center tile. I'm gonna take the push brush. Your program will probably have something similar. It might be called smudge or smear or something like that. So I'm gonna make the brush fairly small. And with around half the opacity. And then from the sides towards the middle, from this right hand tile towards the middle tile, and from the left hand tile to the middle tile, I'm gonna smudge. Just move things around here. And then I'm going to take a sharpen tool. You should also have something like this. But this is just kind of helps to cloak the blurry bits that you might have created when you smudge things around. And then let's select, actually let's make the grid a little bigger so we can clearly see which tile we're working on. So let's select the middle now. Let's copy it, paste it, paste it. Select none, disable the grid. Okay, so that's a little better. Still needs a little bit of work, so I'm just gonna repeat the same steps. Now let's copy it and paste it again. I say that's good enough. Nobody's gonna notice. Okay, maybe that little edge here. Okay, that's perfect. Right, so then I'm gonna create tiles for the edges. So I need this log to kind of, I need an end piece for the log. So the way I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna enable the grid. I'm gonna set the grid to 4 by 4. That's half the size of the log. I'm gonna take the circle selection and I'm gonna create a new layer, and then I'm gonna pick an appropriate color. So it's probably gonna be a little bit of a brighter wood in the middle, like this. And then I'm gonna shrink the selection by 1 pixel. I'm gonna drop the brightness inside the selection by maybe 50. I'm gonna shrink the existing selection again. And now I'm gonna brighten it by 50. And shrink it again by 1 pixel. And brighten it, darken it by 50 again. So now we have something that kind of looks like the end of a log. I'm gonna copy it over here, and on the other side I'm gonna just do the opposite, so that when the edges meet, it's gonna be like these are gonna be on this side and these are gonna be on this side. So next, I think I'm gonna do a window. I have window reference here. The window is about, it's 4 logs tall in here. I think I'm gonna make it 5 in my texture. I'm gonna make the grid a little bigger so I can see what I'm doing. I'm gonna copy this. Actually, let's just merge the layers again. Copy this a few times. And I'm gonna make the window on this middle tile here. So I'm gonna set the grid to the size of the. Actually, let's just move this over so we're not confused by which log belongs to which tile. And then window shape is a little wider than it is tall, so that looks about right. Make a new layer for the window, and then I'm just gonna like use plain gray color. I'm gonna remove snap to grid, but I'm not disabling the grid itself. I'm just disabling the snapping, so I can see what I'm doing. Oops. And I'm just gonna make it almost exactly like that. So you have 2 vertical planks. I'll use the wooden texture we made before and angle it so it's 90 degrees. Fill it like that, copy that over this side, and then I'm gonna color these bits with the same pattern, except I'm gonna turn the grains around again. And then it'll probably be easier if I make the little bits of the window on a separate layer as well. So I'm gonna select this layer that I was working on before and maybe copy some elements from it and go to this layer, this new layer, and do something like this. Actually, I'm just gonna make this a bit more transparent so I can clearly see. How am I gonna do this? I'm gonna color middle of this black. Well, I'll just try to work with this. It's a little hard to see where the edges go, but oops, I'm working in the wrong layer there. Hard to see where the edges go, but I'll do my best. I'm just copying little bits to create the new window bit, the smaller bit that goes inside. And finally the little grid on the windows. There's 4 that way. And then I'm gonna darken this inside bit a little bit. Actually scratch that, I'm gonna brighten the outside bit. That's gonna work a little better. You can use whatever brightness, gamma. And then next up I need to kind of distinguish this outside frame from the inside frame, and I also want to make the outside frame cast a shadow on the logs. So simple way you can do this is drop shadow if you have a shadow filter. Like this. Now I'm gonna make the inside layer, the inside frame actually on the bottom, and then I'm gonna delete this. You see I've got this black rectangle on the layer that's got the bigger window frame, so I'm just gonna delete that. Make it cast a shadow again. It's a little too much shadow on some of these parts, so I'm just gonna use the eraser brush to gently remove it. Like that. And then also I'm gonna make a new layer to make the background completely black. I need some more definition on these edges, so I'm just gonna hide the other stuff for now. And I'm gonna kinda assume the light comes from the top left. I'm gonna make the bottom right edges a little darker with this brush here. And then the opposite to the top left edges. Same for this one. Now since this board kind of looks like it goes under the other two sideboards, I'm not gonna brighten this edge. I'm just gonna darken the bottom and brighten the top. Rinse and repeat. That's looking a little better. The inner frame still looks crap and it kind of blends into the outer frame. Just I'm gonna brighten it up a little bit like this. Now you can kind of more clearly tell that it's its own thing. I'll have to delete this crap. And I'm gonna make these grids a little rough, so I'm just gonna take the lighten slash darken brush and just kinda apply it a bit randomly here and there. Just mess it up a little bit and then try to fix it by hand. That gives it a natural look. Mess it up first and try to fix it by hand a little bit. Also, I want to keep that bit dark. Oops. There we go. Okay. So now I'm just gonna apply a color to this whole thing. And create a new layer. Select the... Oops, let's enable the grid so we can create an accurate selection. Select this whole boxy area that the window is set inside. And we have this new layer, just flood it with a wooden color and overlay. Now we can kind of control the color of this thing. If we maybe I think hard light would be a little bit better. I'm just gonna adjust the hue a little bit. You can use other colors too if you want. You can make it purple if you feel like it, if you're feeling special. Blue. I'm just gonna stick to the wooden colors. Decrease the saturation a little bit. Yeah, I think that's about it. Maybe I'll select this middle area here and change the color and brightness a little bit. So it kind of stands out more on its own. There we go. Merge all and flatten. I kind of want to make these little logs match the color of this window thing, because it's a good idea to just kind of keep the same palette and color scheme for the same texture setting. Looks better that way as a whole. So I'm just gonna select these bits and select color range. You are almost guaranteed to have this feature. If you don't, you just gotta select the circles manually again and just kind of select the area, because these ones are bright, these circles are bright, the background is darker, so I'm gonna select the darker color and give it a high tolerance. That's good. I'm gonna pick this color and then just gonna colorize it with a color brush. There we go. And then I'm just gonna quickly edit this window and turn it into a door. How am I gonna do that? So I'm gonna separate this. I'm gonna make the door into this tile. So I'm gonna reuse the materials that I already have at my disposal. Copy this here. Copy this, I think, here. Actually, let's do that on a new layer. Remember, you need to switch between layers when you're copying things. And about there, maybe. I'm gonna center it like this. Copy and continue this all the way down. And then add the top bit. Whoops, again, wrong layer was selected. Grab the shape of the door and apply the drop shadow effect again. It was a little too strong last time around. Remember, we had to remove a little bit of it, so I'm just gonna drop the value for the opacity a little bit. That's perfect. Select the inside part of the door, where the door is supposed to go. probably pick the same color as the window. Let's create this on a new layer again. Oops. We need to put it on the top. There we go. And once again we're going to use our wood grain pattern. I'm going to tilt it so that it's vertical. And you know, you might as well just use the paint bucket tool and use the blend mode as overlay, so you don't have to make a separate layer. That doesn't look good. Let's try hard light. And that looks crap as well. Let's try a less dark hard light. That's better. And then I'm going to invert the selection so everything except the door is selected. I'm going to cast a drop shadow. Make it a little deeper. So this door is clearly like inside. It's within the door frame. It sinks into the wall a little bit. You can make the shadow a little stronger like that. You can manually use the light and darken brush. Oops. Need to invert the selection to add a bit of a edge to the bottom. Maybe a little bit here too. And then I'm gonna add a doorknob. Probably goes around here. I'm going to do this in a very simple way, so I'm just going to use the light and darken brush. So I'm going to make a little blotch kind of on the center, not really in the center, kind of on the top left, but not way top left either, just kind of a little blob. And then on the bottom right edge, I'm just going to darken it a little bit. You know, just assuming the light kind of comes from the top left. And then I'm going to invert the selection so everything except the doorknob is selected. Increase the size of the brush a little bit. And add a little bit of a shadow for the doorknob. And another thing, I probably should have done this before I did the doorknob, but it's whatever, is I want to add planks, vertical planks on the door, so I'm probably gonna do, well, let's just kind of do it on the fly here. New layer, and let's just make a black line here. And another black line, and then we can just kind of keep copying it over. And then I'll just move it a little bit to the side and delete the area where the doorknob is supposed to be, like that. Reduce the visibility so that it's not just a bunch of thick black lines. I think that's pretty good. You could try different layers, layer modes to overlay. I think it doesn't really make that much of a difference. Yeah, just gonna merge all the layers again, and yeah, I think I've got a pretty solid set of log cabin textures here. Thanks for watching. Good luck with texture editing.